Alright guys, welcome back to another video. So we're going to be taking another attempt at making a fairly simple shaker style chair with a woven seat and a woven back. Now if you haven't seen the first video in this kind of chair making series, the first one was kind of a failure. So I tried to take the plans directly from this book, How to Build Shaker Furniture, but I found that there's actually a lot of information missing from this little set of plans that they give you here. There was also a few other attempts on that chair that I didn't fully understand how things work, mainly the mortises that hold the back slats. I didn't fully understand that those had to be at an angle until I actually had a physical chair leg in my hands and I realized, oh, these need to be at a different angle. So now what I'm going to be doing instead is I'm going to be combining a few different sets of plans here. So the ones from the book here give you a lot of very simple dimensions in that and make things pretty easy to understand. But the problem with these plans is they're missing out some key components like what angles all of the spindles need to be in order for things to line up. And so that's where this other set of plans comes in. So I downloaded this set of plans from Fine Woodworking magazine. They have a free shaker rocking chair set of plans that you can go and download from their website. But anyway, the issue that this set of plans solved is I now have very specific dimensions in that things need to be. So what I'm going to be doing here is kind of combining some dimensions from the chair from the book and some of the dimensions from the chair from the free plans. So what makes these shaker chairs an easy thing to start with is that you basically can work from just square stock. The way the shakers design them is that everything is fairly thick so that you don't have to worry about cutting the stock out of the log itself, and you can work with this more kiln dried, perfectly squared up stock from the beginning. And so I'm starting off with the legs because obviously you need to base everything else off of these legs. So the leg turnings are a fairly simple thing to do, you're just trying to turn them round, but that is a lot harder than it sounds. One of the things that I found the most complicated about this whole process is just the fact that trying to keep that same 1.5 inch round thickness across the whole length of these legs. Now the front ones weren't too bad, but when it came to the back ones, they're almost 40 inches long, and it took a lot of time, effort, and patience to try and keep them the same thickness all the way through. And when it came to doing the back legs, I had a lot of trouble with vibration at first. Even with how thick these pieces are, they're starting at almost 2 inches thick all the way around, there was quite a bit of vibrations when I wasn't holding the tool properly. But luckily, after a little bit of research, I found that the angle that you hold the roughing gouge at very specifically will result in certain amounts of vibrations. So as long as you take the time to practice holding that roughing gouge at that proper angle, you can pretty much eliminate vibrations across a piece like this. Then one of the biggest things I've found when it comes to chair making is that you need to get good at making jigs. Every little component of every single style of chair you're going to make requires some kind of a jig. So with these shaker style chairs, the most important feature of them is having accurately drilled holes. So everything here is going to be done using machinery just because nothing really needs to be done by hand. So I made up this very simple little plywood jig to hold these legs perfectly squared up with the baseline. And then I'm just using the flat surface that is my table saw and a 1-2-3 setup block holding my pencil to scribe a straight line right down the center of the post. Now ideally you would do this on the lathe, but I still haven't found a good alternative to it just because my lathe is a little bit weirdly set up. And so this method worked just fine, and I could use that to find the dead center of the post along the whole length of it. Then at this point, I'm just eyeballing square. Again, this is one of the things with chair making is that everything doesn't need to be absolutely perfect. As long as it visually looks perfect, that is basically all that matters. Then I'm using my drill press with a 5/8 brad point bit and drilling a 1-inch deep mortise. With the front and back mortises drilled, we could move on to doing the side mortises. So the side mortises are where things get complex because you have to start dealing with acute and obtuse angles. So on the back of the seat, we have an acute angle of 80 degrees. On the front post, we have an obtuse angle of 100 degrees. So the simplest way to figure this out is to just make a little triangle. As you guys saw me use in the setup there, that's just a piece of MDF cut at a very specific angle with an 80-degree angle at the top and then a 10-degree angle at the front point. And so all you gotta do is when you're setting your pieces up in the jig is just put in a test piece that's still nice and square, set it to match the angle of that little triangle there, and that gives you an absolutely perfect angle for setting up for the jig. Then when it comes to turning all the spindles for these stretchers, I just went with 4/4 stock and turned it to just over 3/4 of an inch thick. Now this is kind of an unideal situation the way that I did these because I just broke them down from a normal piece of 4/4 stock. The proper thing to have done here would have been to break that 4/4 piece of stock with an axe or a hatchet. That way I could actually make these spindles follow the grain. And the only real difference there is that they would be just a little bit stronger. Now I didn't have any issues with the way that these were set up, other than in the steam bending, which you guys will see in a little bit here. But again, in the future, what I plan to do is to just make sure that I split the wood and make sure that all of these spindles are following the grain. And then on to probably the most stressful part of this whole project, the steam bending. So these first pieces you're seeing here, this is my first attempt at steam bending actual project pieces. Up until this point, everything I've tried to bend has been just kind of messing around, but these ones very specifically needed to be at proper angles and shaped in a way that would work for this chair. And so what I did for this first attempt is I steamed it for 2 hours and then I left it in the still warm and somewhat moist box overnight. Now as you can see here, this didn't actually work out because the spindle just snapped right in half. The first one worked alright and the slat worked alright, but they still had some minor cracks in them. In the second attempt that I did, I steamed the pieces for 1 hour and then I left them soaking in a bucket of water for 72 hours before I came back and steamed them for their proper amount of time, given their thickness. And this worked out absolutely perfectly. And easily the most terrifying part of this whole project was having to hand drill out all of these mortises for these curved pieces. So the 2 curved spindles are fairly easy. All you have to do is hold the spindle at the kind of the angle that you're looking for, and just kind of go for it. So I'm using the laser level here to give me a line going all the way across so that I know that my mortises are perfectly aligned on the horizontal. The angle here really is just the best guess. As you can see, I'm kind of fumbling around trying to hold the drill at that proper angle, and this is one of the more challenging things. But luckily on all 4 of these holes that I had to drill here, they all came out as close and as good as I can expect. The chair came together just fine, but these mortises definitely could have been just a little bit better potentially. Then the slat obviously needed a square mortise, so I couldn't use my mortise or anything like that, so I had to go back to the old school technique of drilling out all the holes. Again, these are all at quite a weird angle, so I just used the hand drill to put all those holes in there, and then a chisel to clear out the waste. For the glue up, I'm using hide glue. Now the idea here is that if a spindle ever breaks on this chair or needs to be replaced for some other reason, what I can do is I can steam the joint and then I can disassemble the chair. Now, I don't actually know how feasible of an option this is, but it seems kind of like the right idea, and I see a lot of chair makers, whether they're making Windsor chairs, shaker style chairs, basically anyone who makes chairs seems to swear by this hide glue. Now, my first experience with it on this chair was not great. It kind of made a big mess of the place. But it's something that I'm going to keep working towards, because ideally, if you can disassemble this chair in the future, if need be, that would be a nice option to have, because there's a lot of time that goes into making these chairs, turning all those spindles and all that. So it would be a really bad thing if one of those spindles was to break and you basically have to throw away the chair at that point. Now, weaving these seats was nothing short of an absolutely mind-numbing task. Because the seat is at that angle, you really have to do a lot of kind of figuring out and messing around to figure out where you want to start your wrap, what angle you need to start at, and just kind of how many wraps you need to do to get your seat to be properly fitted. Now, like I said, this is an absolutely mind-numbing process, so I don't want to go into too much detail on this video, because this is something that is deserving of its own explanatory videos sometime in the future when I actually start to understand how it worked. In the case of this chair, I really just kind of made it up as I went along, and it worked out fine. There are some spaces that don't look amazing, but given that it's a first attempt at weaving these chair seats, I think I'm more than happy with it, and I think it looks really dang good. And adding in these cushions is such an important part of making a properly set up woven shaker chair. Because what this cushion does is it distributes the weight of the person sitting on the chair between the top and the bottom layer. It also obviously adds a little bit of cushioning to make the seat a little bit softer, but it adds a lot of strength to the seat that you don't get if you just have an empty airspace in the middle there. And both of the cushions on this chair were made from a 70 denier nylon that is water resistant. Now my thinking here is that if these chairs ever get wet, you spill a glass of water or other liquid on them, you don't want the filler material to get wet and start to grow mold, because it's nearly impossible to replace that cushion without disassembling the entire chair. And so by using that water-resistant fabric, it'll prevent moisture from soaking up into that filler material, and just overall I think is a better quality thing than just stuffing some foam in there. Okay, so that is the first shaker chair completed. So I really like the way that this chair came out. It's super comfortable to sit in. The back is nice and supported. The cushions make everything nice and soft to sit on. So one of the things that I was concerned about when going into this chair is the woven seat. I didn't think it was going to be as comfortable as it's turned out to be. Because if you look back on my channel, I built a small stool a little while back where I wove the seat in the same manner as I did here, and it's a very uncomfortable stool to sit on. The way that I wove the seat on that stool, it's very tight and very rigid, so when you sit on it, it doesn't have any cushioning effect, plus I didn't fill in that inner space between the two layers, so it is kind of an uncomfortable place to sit. Whereas on this chair, having filled in the space between the two layers of these webbings on both the bottom and the back, it's super soft. It's like sitting on a pillow, but it's way more, but it's kind of bouncier, and there's no hard seat underneath like on most other types of chairs. So you feel fully supported. It's a very strong surface, but it's also super soft. So it's just a really nice design of a chair. So the next thing I want to try adding to these shaker style chairs is the back angle. So right now these back posts are just a straight post going from the floor all the way up, and there's no angle to them. There's two ways that the shakers actually added a nice lean to the back of your chairs. One way is to just angle all of your side stretchers. So the holes for your stretchers that are going across the front and across the back stay the exact same. They just go in at 90 degrees. But the holes for these side stretchers would be at a slight angle, either 5, 10, 15 degrees, just depending on how much of an angle you want to your back. You can vary that angle to then create an angle going across the whole length of this thing. And so what that does is it tilts the whole angle of the chair so that your seat is a little bit lower and your back comes back at a little bit angle, but you still have these straight posts going up. So overall, it's a little bit of a cleaner aesthetic. The other option is to go through and steam bend. So you would do exactly like we did here, except you would steam bend these back posts here so that there's a slight curvature to them. And I think that that would make a massive difference. Because right now, the way that this cushion sits, I've got a lot of support right in the middle of my back, but I don't have anything on my lower back, and I don't have anything on my shoulders. And so by bending those back posts, you get a little bit more even support across your whole back. Rather than just the middle where it is right now, you get a little bit along the lower and a little bit more on your shoulders. But overall, this is still a super comfortable chair. Even though it has a straight back, it is a very comfortable chair to sit in compared to basically any other dining room chair I've ever sat in. Even the ones that have like those big cushions on them, this is very comfortable. And so I'm still going to be going hard with the chair making stuff. I've got a whole bunch of different ideas and that I want to try out. I'm going to be starting to go to a farmer's market over the summer here where I think that these chairs are going to probably be a pretty big hit because they're one of the only things that I can actually bring with me. The bigger, heavier furniture than that, I don't know if I'll be able to fit that in the bed of my truck with everything else I have to bring with me. So right now I'm focusing mainly on the shaker style, but in a little while, once I get some more tools and that I need, I'm going to start moving into the Windsor style, which has a lot more freedom of design, a lot more interesting stuff you can do. Whereas with the shaker style, you're kind of limited to the more traditional styles, which again, I like it just as much. So that'll all be coming out in the future here. So as always, guys, I do hope you enjoyed this video and I will see you in the next one.